is I have two
All right,
people
he's coming
retiring.
in.
Okay.
There we go. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning.
Assemblyman.
Sorry about that. We moved into a new office, so we're having a little late start trying to get everything working.
No worries. Thank you so much for reaching out and having Kirsten reach out to meet with us. We so appreciate it, and we definitely appreciate your time and of course your support. I'm Belinda Govich. I'm the one who reached out, so thank you. We have Jerry Keenan, who is our chapter president for the Capital Chapter of NIAP, which some of your district is with us, Corinth and Queensbury and Fort Anne.
Okay.
All the way up there we have is part of our chapter. We have Amy, who's here too. She's our secretary for our Capital Chapter. Claudine is our vice president. I'm Brian Sim is our treasurer. I don't know that he's able to join us today. We also have Dave Christopher, you may know as the executive director of NIAP, and then of course, Director of Transportation Al Karam of Shenandoah, who is going to be talking to in-depthly about our EV buses, challenges we face, help we may need from you, and other legislation and legislators. So without further ado, as I know your time is valuable, I'm going to let Al go ahead and dive right in. And then, of course, if you have any questions on that, he'll be happy to answer them for you.
Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and share my screen first. Can you all see the presentation? Yes?
I can.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, good morning and welcome. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to share the short presentation that I shared at our January chapter meeting with a couple of your colleagues in the Assembly and the State Senate. The next few slides are going to talk about fleet electrification as mandated by the state. This is a short presentation that's going to focus on costs and challenges. The intent of this presentation is really to seek help from our state legislatures to help us get to the 2035 deadline as required by that mandate. And I can assure you that none of us here in the school transportation profession are anti-zero emission buses or zero emission anything. We've always embraced technology, which helps us to meet our basic mission of keeping our students safe and providing for efficient transportation services. And of course, as lawmakers, you all play a huge role in that endeavor. So having a clean environment is really a noble goal that we really all should be striving for. Today's internal combustion engine powered school buses are 96% cleaner than they were a decade ago. We know that technology is ever changing, and as school transportation professionals, we welcome technological advancements. But we also must be methodical and prudent in embracing technology, especially of the technology, if that technology is not ready for prime time and it is excessively expensive. Electric power buses have their pros and cons like all other vehicles. We need to understand from an operational perspective what those pros and cons are and how to deal with them. So everyone right now is focused on, let's just go ahead and purchase these buses without really looking long-term at what it means operationally and fiscally for school districts. There are studies done in the US, China, and elsewhere that speak to operations having to modify their electric buses to meet the winter's demand and or add more buses to their fleet to meet the operational demand where it once took a diesel bus to do now takes 2 electric buses. And once you modify an electric bus, it renders that bus non-zero emission type vehicle. So today, the only zero emission buses available are electric. If you ask bus manufacturers, can they turn a fleet of over 45,000 school buses here in the state of New York to electric in 12 years? They will tell you 12 years is not long enough. They can only produce about 1,000 electric buses a year. So do the math. We'll come up around 35,000 short. Most of our bus compounds will also require capital projects to prepare them for electric buses. The capital project is needed to run heavy electrical wires for the installation of the chargers. And at a bare minimum, it'll probably take 2 years just to get that process going for the infrastructure improvement. And that is, by the way, if the voters approve these types of expenditures. And also, districts may not be eligible for state aid on such projects to include the cost of the chargers, which could run anywhere from $10,000 to about $75,000, dependent on the type of chargers purchased, which is dictated by electrical, or really the electric is now the fuel that is needed, and the time available to recharge, be that in between runs or overnight or both. Furthermore, there are huge hurdles for districts that park buses indoors, and for contractors who don't have the real estate to provide the parking space for each bus they operate. And of course, where are they going to put those electrical chargers? Indoor parking leaves little to no space for these chargers. The contractors have zero room in their current compounds. It's going to leave them scrambling to go find the real estate for that. So I'm not sure how that's going to work out over the next 10 to 12 years. Let's talk a little bit about state aid. The state is saying that electric buses are going to be amortized for 12 years. There will be an impact on school district budgets given the extremely high cost of electric buses and their charging infrastructure to recoup the state aid over this length of time, while the yearly bus replacement is at an astronomical level. This will affect revenue streams that school districts currently rely on. And here's an example. So if we spread the cost of a small bus, we call that a type A, for 12 years, and that bus falters, let's say around the 7 or 9 year mark, we would be paying on a vehicle that no longer exists in our inventory, and we will end up, or we could end up extending the life of the school bus, but that too has cost ramifications. What happens if we get rid of the bus early? Does the state aid stop? Because they say in electric buses, they're going to give us aid on it for 12 years. You get rid of it early, does that aid stop? If it does, then the district's going to be out of a lot of money. To help us achieve the state goal of 2035, our members highly encourage the state to fully fund incremental cost of electric buses, and that reimbursement be paid the following year after purchase. Districts need a whole lot more guaranteed incentives to convert their fleets than what is currently being offered. Here's another operational concern we have. At what point can we make an electric bus a spare? So currently we're authorized to do so in the 6th year after the bus is purchased, because the state aid would have been done by the end of the 5th year. Again, because those buses currently are amortized for 5 years. So the state requires us, while they're paying state aid, to have the bus on a regular route for 5 years. If you don't, you're not going to get state aid on that vehicle. So if now we spread that aid over 12 years, does this mean that we have to assign that bus for 12 years, as is the current rule? That's going to make for some very old spare bus fleet in the future. Having older spare buses, I can tell you, is very costly, and it will create operational havoc relative to uptime, downtime, and our ability to pick up children and bring them to school and do so safely. This slide doesn't address the infrastructure costs from the bus compound upgrades to the electrical service upgrades and the initial charging system installation. So for example, here at Shen, at a minimum, the cost to upgrade our bus compound to accept chargers, we're going to be looking at anywhere between $5 to $7 million. We haven't even figured out the cost to upgrade the electrical service itself. We know we're going to need 2 to 3 times more electrical power to be brought in. We know that because we had National Grid do an assessment, and we also hired a consultant who also did a very thorough assessment. Currently, we have 1.68 megawatts of power coming in. We're going to need between 4.3 to 6 megawatts to fuel the building, and the future 217 electric school buses. So, my question is, does the state have this kind of money just for the school buses, as you see on this slide? Will the voters approve the high costs, especially when they have to foot for the entire bill for the buses, chargers, infrastructure, and power upgrades? Because not all school districts are eligible for any types of grants. We applied for grants and didn't get any because we're not tribal, we're not rural, and we don't operate in non-attainment areas. We kind of talked about that briefly earlier. At the current rate, manufacturers are able to produce electric buses. If no other obstacles are encountered, they could replace 12,000 buses in 12 years. That would leave us around 38,000 buses short to fully electrifying the fleet across the state by 2035. And by the way, that was verified by one of our vendors, Leonard Bus. So here's an example for Shenandoah in terms of cost. And this graph, what it shows you, the red bars is what our current bus replacement plan is. It hovers anywhere between 2.2 to about $2.5 million per year if we didn't have to turn our attention to electric buses. That's around over the next 12 years, probably around 35 million. If we have to fully electrify the fleet, and by the way, we're already 1 year behind trying to achieve what the state mandate says, we would have to spend anywhere between 7.8 to about $8.7 million every year for the next 12 years. It's about $100 million. 60% aid on that is about 3.75% of that 1.6 billion state aid that's put out every year for school transportation. Just to kind of like give you an idea how much money we're talking about just for one school district.
Right.
So again, this cost does not include infrastructure, construction, upgrades, and charger themselves. And as each year ticks by, the chargers are going to degrade as well and are going to require replacement. So if we were to buy chargers today, let's say we bought 19 chargers for 19 buses today, in approximately 8 years, there are studies that say chargers will have to be replaced anywhere between 5 to 7 or 8 to 10 years. So as you look at the graph, by the time you're into your 8th year of fleet conversion to electricity, you are going to start also have to replace a whole lot more than what you're buying in terms of chargers, because they are computerized. They're going to fail just like any computer that's out there. So from my perspective, the state financial resources would be better served if the state would adopt a better option to convert buses in the 5 boroughs and the big cities in upstate and Western New York, where the CO2 concentration is much higher and a bigger part of the disadvantaged, where the disadvantaged communities reside. They should leave the rest of the school districts, leave them alone. Let us adopt the zero emission buses as a percentage of our fleet. Let us maintain a mix of diesel, gas, electric, because really that is economically more sensible to convert instead of converting the entire fleet between now and 2035. So the fleet conversion cost, again, is for new equipment, doesn't take into account future equipment swaps, such as chargers and buses age out. A study was done for a school district, I'm not going to name it, in New York State, that showed a total cost of ownership for an electric bus would drop to $1,500 per year after 28 years. And I said this in the meeting the other day, I'm going to repeat it again. Who in their right mind in upstate New York would keep a school bus for 28 years to finally realize a low total cost of ownership, you know, how many times would that bus would have to go through a battery replacement as an example, or the electric drive motor over this 28-year span? And currently, those two items are very, very expensive. We have all experienced bus proposition voter rejection in our careers. When bus purchase referendum is rejected by the voters, we end up purchasing less buses, or in some cases, we don't put the bus proposition back up. And so we end up keeping older buses, which causes the fleet to age over time, which has a negative side effect on school transportation budgets vis-a-vis bus maintenance and repairs. Voter rejection must be part of the calculus with respect to the 2035 mandate. So what happens if voters reject the proposition once, twice, or three times in the next 12 years, especially for districts like Shen that must foot the entire bill without any help from the so-called available grant monies? What will it mean with respect to the 2035 mandate? The prior 8 slides only scratch the surface. We are very concerned that we will not be able to meet the state mandate by 2035. We can spend many more hours talking about a lot of other challenges that no vendor or other interested parties have addressed, which, by the way, I'm doing a presentation next week, February the 9th, that is going to do a deeper dive into operational challenges. So we are asking our help from our legislatures to either slow down the conversion by removing this artificial date of 2035 as a debt certain date, or fully funding the fleet conversion to include infrastructure upgrades the year following such bus purchase or upgrades. So I thank you for your time, sir, this morning, and thank you for all you do for your constituents.
Well, I really appreciate this presentation, and it really reaffirms another conversation I've had with a superintendent within my district who had started the process of trying to acquire EVs and do the planning, and ultimately met a lot of challenges along the way, notwithstanding the ability of National Grid to even be able to bring the energy needed to supply those buses. I know I've spoken to another superintendent, my own home district, North Warren. We don't have covered buses. We don't even have buildings to facilitate the EVs to support an EV structure, which are going to be in the millions and millions of dollars in a very tough district to get those kind of things voted in the affirmative on a school budget vote. So this is why it was really important to me. I was sick. I had some kind of upper respiratory and couldn't attend that meeting, but this is why I really wanted to connect to gain as much information as I can, because we aren't ready. I'm not confident that New York State is going to fully fund all of this either. I think we need to slow this down, move at an appropriate pace that meets the technology and the fiscal implications, because after all, I mean, we have to keep in mind, we don't want to have the issue with school budgets and all that affect our students. I mean, why we're there, and something so costly as this can really affect the overall education system if it's not fully funded.
Let me bring in Mr. Christopher in on the conversation. Dave has his ears attuned to the entire state, and maybe he can also offer some more comments on that. Dave, can you turn your mic on?
I think your presentation was spot on. We're hearing that from across the state in terms of the cost, the concerns about technology, infrastructure, even down in the Long Island area where, the emphasis probably should be the city area. There's a lot of concern, in some cases, greater concern because of space, as Al said. There's just no space to put charging infrastructure. So I think to slow this down and to, rethink this, in a structured way makes sense. I understand the governor did propose some pilot programs yesterday. We proposed that last year when this all hit the fan, and no one really was interested in that. So we hope that that's going to happen, because I think that's important to get some pilots out there to understand the impact of this in different geographical areas of the state. In terms of the grants and the rebates, we hear a lot about that, but to Al's point, most school districts, particularly upstate, don't apply. They can't qualify for those grants. And the schools that are getting those grants are very concerned about the future propositions where they feel the entire cost of the EV transition or the upgrade. So even a school district in upstate New York that has a grant that has a $40,000 proposition out there to cover the school district piece is concerned that the voters will approve that, because of just philosophically, they're not interested in getting involved in EVs because there's so many concerns about moving forward in the future. I think to Al's point, where, when you make these plans to convert to EVs, electric buses or zero emission buses, you need to think of it long term, not just something that you're gonna do in the short run, because there's huge kinds of cost involved. So the presentation was great. I appreciate that you're hearing this elsewhere, and hopefully we all work together and we could slow this down and try to do it right. The cost of retrofitting your electric program because you didn't do it right the first time is enormous. And we have a couple cases in point that I'm aware of a contractor in a school district who did just that, and significant dollars spent to get upgraded. So I appreciate you listening to us today.
Can I bring up one other thing from the agenda, or from our legislative agenda, not just the electric buses, but one pressing issue is to extend the waiver for retiree earnings cap beyond June of 2023. The state retirees, I employ some, most of us do, and it could really put us in jeopardy. For instance, here in Guilderland, I could potentially be losing my 19A trainer, and I only have one if that waiver goes away. So that's something that's very time critical, because that waiver will expire at the end of June of this year. Right. So that is something that's very important. That's in my forefront to keep my staff employed, because to find a trainer, as we all know, is very hard. And, plus we have retiree drivers, and we're already facing a driver shortage. We were talking before you came on. I drive a bus every day. Just about. I have a route I'm doing all week with somebody out, and we need to I can't even say the word, but we need to really bring those people in that can earn over the cap, so that we can keep our bus drivers employed and keep our runs running. Right now, I have more condensed runs here in Guilderland than we had historically when I started. Because I just didn't have the drivers to fill them. And in essence, we have now had to contract out, spending millions of dollars to contractors, because we don't have the drivers here in-house to be able to handle those. So this is a really important topic to most of us in the industry.
Dave?
Yeah, it's common with, my district has two, I'm actually going to the Champlain Valley district. They have a meeting up in Plattsburgh tonight, but it's the same thing there. I have two sister-in-laws that were bus drivers for our school system, and we really need this change. We need to raise that cap.
Yep.
I didn't know if you wanted to add anything to that, Dave, what you've seen statewide on that as well.
Yeah, we did a survey on that, and we one of the better survey results we've gotten in terms of participation. But we had over 100 school districts across the state that reported that they used employed retirees in their school transportation operations who would benefit from this waiver of the retiree cap of $35,000. So it's really helped out the last past year. It's pretty much statewide, and if we can continue, I mean, we've actually proposed it for 60 more months because this isn't going to go away in a year. And quite honestly, the year-to-year thing is helpful, but some people are confused and they balk at it because they don't want, obviously, to lose their retirement and in terms of going over that 35,000. So they just stop working in November or October. But we'll take whatever we get. I know in your area it's an issue because I've heard from a couple school districts up north where I believe they employ some retired prison guards who are working for school districts who it's an advantage to them as well. So it's something that we would certainly hope that the legislature would pass this year. And we did talk to CSEA union about this. CSEA in the past has had concerns about this. We did talk to them and they're totally on board. They see no issues with it. So that's important.
There's been discussions because it's not just affecting, bus drivers. It's, I have a staff person that's a retired state trooper, legislative aide, and there's just many sectors that are relying on retirees. And let's face it, we have a lot of state retirees, and we have a shortage of people to fill those jobs. And it even affects the school resource officers, which are typically retired deputies or other law enforcement. So
the other thing I would add to that 35,000 is that was put in place back in the 90s, is never kept up with inflation either.
right.
So while we would love to keep 35 extended for a few more years, we really also need to look at raising that.
Yeah,
Exactly. And I think that's part of the discussion. We've had discussions about this. There is a lot of talk about it, especially with kind of the special session action that was taken with raising our salaries and limiting our outside income. There are people that are concerned, and that's part of the discussions of, raising those caps. So
it's a good part-time job for people who are retired.
right.
And a lot of people, retire from state service, they get bored after a couple of years and then they knock on your door and say, hey, you got a job for me. And then they work until they're like 65 or 66 in 10 months or whatever. And, with the situation with a huge shortage that's impacting kids every day, many of them are just willing to work extra, more than 35K a year to help out. So I guess we don't see the harm in that.
I have friends that are teachers that have retired at 55. A good friend of mine, and he doesn't. And we need help in certain areas, in certain places, and that would be advantageous if we could make this work.
Absolutely.
I do just want to introduce Pete Tunney, who I didn't know came on. Pete's our chair for the legislative committee for the Capitol chapter.
Former chair. Karim is now the chair. I'm a co-chair.
Co-chair. Is there anything you want to add to what Al or Dave said that you're hearing?
No, I'm hearing what they're hearing, basically. And I apologize for being late to this meeting. I had another meeting that ran over, so.
No worries, Pete.
Well, Mr. Simpson, any questions you or your staff have? Obviously, you got a lot of resources here in front of you from NIAP to the local chapter of NIAP. I highly encourage you to reach out to us. And if you or your staff members have any time on the 9th at, I believe that's at 10 a.m. as well, we can send you the link, because we will be doing a much more deeper dive than we did today into what schools will be facing in the future if we continue on this road to electrification.
Yes, please send me the link, because I just had something cancel out on the 9th, and that may work out great.
Maybe we provide our email addresses as well, so that unless you may have got them on the invite, I guess. So
Yeah, we have those.
And Dave put his in the chat if you wanna, if you need that. jot
Okay,
down. But I will definitely send the link to Kirsten. If that
okay.
want me to send it for the 9th.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yep, I'll do that. So I believe Assemblywoman Walsh and a couple other of your colleagues have asked for it, so hopefully we'll
Yeah.
see some faces again.
Okay.
And thank you so much for your time. Again, we really appreciate it. And we definitely look forward to working with you and hopefully seeing you on the 9th again as we talk more about this and other challenges that we're facing. So thank you so much for your support.
Thank you, and thank you for doing
Thank
this
you.
again. Again, I apologize, I wasn't able to make the other meeting. I had intended on it, but I'm very thankful you offered your time up today for this. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Have a
Hey,
good
have a
Linda,
good day.
Linda, Claudine, and Amy, can you stay on for like 1 minute?
All right, see you all.
Bye, guys. Thank
Take
you.
care.
So for next week's meeting after Al's presentation, do you guys think, should we do a small business meeting and approve? We have December minutes to approve and probably